Congratulations on Quiet Explosions. I watched it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It's available over here in the UK on Vimeo. You can't get it on Amazon. It's on Amazon Prime. It's on Vimeo over here. Amazing. Hit the nail on the head with everything that you, the Angel Warrior Foundation, and your brother, and obviously Mark Gordon are advocating. And we'll come on to that, mate. But where does your journey start, dude? Where does the start of the journey of the Angel Warrior produced the Angel Warrior Foundation? What's your story?
Yeah, it's the Warrior Angel Foundation, and that name came out from my mom. All my brothers were in the Army, in combat times, so we were all deployed, together, and through a large span of time. And so my mom, she would always pray for warrior angels to kind of be protecting us or overhead or close by. And I'm not religious per se, but it was very, comforting for her to think of that. And it brought to myself. And it was, a warrior angel is a brave and experienced fighter of exemplary virtue. And that's what I wanted to be the organization, I wanted to kind of be centered around and stem from. But it came back, I got to the Army in 2006. I finished my degree, I was a college athlete, and I wanted to go to combat, like straight up. I wanted to test myself in combat. I knew there was a war going on, and I thought I should be in it. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's where I wanted to be. And looked at the special operations venues, and I figured in the U.S., the Green Berets was the best fit for me, kind of being a little bit more mature mentally and having some life experience under me, and wanted to go right in, go through the training and get down. And that's what segued, into my military career. So I went in, there's a special program called the 18 X-ray program, which takes, new recruits off the street and you go right to the training pipeline. So I spent about 2 years training, going through all the Special Forces qualification course, and then right into becoming operational, which was in 2009. And I was with my team for less than 3 months. And then we were in Helmand, Afghanistan, shortly after my arrival to the team. And then from 2009 to 2013, every calendar year, I was combat deployed. And as you know, Hugh, like part of our, there's a lot of skill sets and a lot of responsibilities. One of the lead responsibilities that I took on, or had the privilege to take on with my team, was lead breacher. So, it was just around a lot of explosions. So we'll go down that rabbit hole, but my background of being a college athlete, American football, all the way to college, and then choosing the profession of a special operator, just that lifestyle alone, and then putting us in and around, multiple low blast scenarios, chronic exposure to blast waves, and if you're going to be proficient in something, whatever it is, chess, shooting free throws, becoming an accountant, you have to practice. For us to be proficient as an operator, we got to practice over and over and over again in real time before you ever step foot in a real life and death situation. No different. And so, we have to practice with live charges, live rounds, hundreds, thousands of times. And we now know that can have a deleterious effects on the brain, its cognition, its ability to perform, and our ability to do life. But that's kind of how I went from college, into the Army. And got in that arena.
Have you got military in your family? I know your brother was a pilot, right? But where did the urge come from? Because for myself, I'm sad to understand sometimes when there's no military. I don't have any military in the family. So what was the score with you? Was it there already?
Yeah. That's a good question. No, there was no military ties in my family. Well, I guess I take that back. My mom's father fought in the Korean War, and I never met him. He died when my mom was 7. And so I didn't have any direct connection or direct ties with anybody. I didn't have any adult or male figures in my life that had time or anything else. My parents were just super patriotic in the sense that from being very young, my mom would tell me that freedom isn't free. And growing up in America, she has my mom and dad both, but my mom specifically was always like, listen, the reason that we're able to go and do and live life the way we want to live is because good men fought, bled, and died to give us the right to be able to do that. And, that's how I came up, man. That was just ingrained in my thinking. So again, like the war kicked off, as you well know, shortly after 2001, Iraq in 2003. And I was in college at the time, and I was pursuing the things that I wanted to pursue. But when that was over, it just what am I going to do next with my life? I didn't even have to think about it, man. Like, I want to go over here. I want to put myself to the ultimate test. Combat is the ultimate test. I believed in what we were doing at the time and wanted to be a part of it. So, no family background. That's just where that kind of drive came from, I think.
How did you find it? We've got a similar thing to what you described as X13. Is that what you called it when you join up? Go straight.
Yeah, it's
yes.
18
so we've got
X-ray is the designator.
Oh, I apologize. 18 X-ray. Yeah. So we got a thing over here called LDET. I think it's still called that, where you can join up and go straight to Special Forces. Is my understanding with it. And how did you find that going into a Special Forces unit? Was everyone the same designation, or were there people there who had been, normal enlisted in the normal army and then chose to join SF? What was that like as an experience?
Wild. So well, the easiest way to say it, so I joined and I wanted that contract. They wouldn't give it to me. I had some injuries, and for whatever reason, the Army in its infinite wisdom says, well, you can't have that contract, but you can go and join the infantry. And I was like, fuck it, fine. That's where I want to be. I'll get over there anyway. And so I went to our basic training, and then kind of hands-on technical part of becoming an infantryman after that. So I think that's what it was, like a 16-week process. Anyways, in there, I performed well, and they said, hey, we'll give you a contract to go right into SF training if you want it. And I was like, yeah, 100%. I want it. So I finished up my 16-week, basic training, and it's not a knock on anybody in the infantry or anything like that, but the individuals that I was within, that I was paired up with in basic training, it just became apparent to me, like, I'm more mature. I'm like, I'm like 24 at the time. And, you're in there with 18-year-old kids. There's just going to be a different level of mentality, the way you see the world and the way you accomplish things. And I was just, I don't think I want to hang out in this arena if I don't have to. And so that also became motivation for me to kind of hopefully get to the next level, hoping that would be maybe a more higher skill level and a higher degree of maturity and professionalism as I went about things. So I got into the program, went straight into airborne school, and then after that you go to Fort Bragg, which is where we do all of our training. And it was pretty cool, Hugh, because they had a special course, preparation course, that prepared the 18 X-rays to go into our assessment and selection course. So I got I think it was 4 weeks at the time. And that specifically was just for 18 X-rays. Now, I'll tell you the ones that are successful and the ones that aren't. The ones that weren't successful as X-rays, they didn't make the cut to get into SF, or they actually fell through the cracks. They got in and they didn't do well, and they burnt out if they got to a team. Or the guys that were very young and had no life experience. On the flip side, if you had older guys who were educated or had actually gone out and learned a trade and had applied themselves and had done life, well, then they brought a whole different, skill set that was different than the conventional Army would have had, in addition to their now special operations training, and that became a very, very a big asset for the team. So, but that being said, there we are. We're Special Forces. The 18 X-ray group. We're at the Special Forces preparatory course, which is 4 weeks of just straight up PT and land nav. And what was great about that is it gave us the where you do assessment and selection at, and that camp in North Carolina is where we trained at for that preparatory course. So we literally got to train where we got to practice where we were going to play at assessment and selection. So when we got to Special Forces assessment and selection, we call it SFAS, it wasn't like I was trying to understand what the terrain was like, what the weather conditions were like, anything like that. We knew it like the back of our hand. So it gave us an unfair advantage, 100%. And those are a highly motivated group of individuals. So that was like its own type of population right there. Go into SFAS, and that's everybody from the Army, which is normally, or I wouldn't say normally, conventionally how Special Forces is pulled from its pool. They would pull from all of the Army, and you had to be at least a E5 sergeant, rank of sergeant. So they wanted somebody who had some experience in the military before they came over and did that. And so, yeah, they pull from everybody in there. So you have a wide variety of people. I would say probably half, if not more, from the infantry. Next 25% is probably the engineers, and then a wide variety of that other, I'd say 20%, and then the last 5% were the X-rays. And that's probably changed as of today. But when I went through in 2007, that was probably the makeup of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear it. On that side, from that civilian straight into the SF world, just obviously we've got something similar here, but also on that the comparison between having prior knowledge before getting into SF or not. There was a period of time over here when I was serving that Hereford, so 22 SAS guys. There was a period of time, I remember it, when it went from a change to them looking for more experienced, more senior guys to attempt selection. It went to switching to they wanted the younger guys, and the reason being is that younger guys who got less experience, they're easier to mold, and they were finding that the older guys are harder to snap out of habits, out of the conventional habits, and switching certain drills and skills into the needs of the Special Forces world and the counter-terrorism and everything else that goes with what you kind of guys do. Mate, can we? Are you able to talk about your first Afghan tour in Helmand, or not?
Mm-hmm.
Not specifics, because we're of a similar age. I didn't realise. I got it, but we got it at different times. So I got in when I was 18, and in 06 when you joined up, I was in then Helmand for my first time. So when did you go to Helmand? 2007.
I was in 2009. Winter 9 up to summer of 2010. Yeah.
Got you. Whereabouts were you operating? What were you doing?
Yeah, we were at Firebase Robinson, right off of, if I remember right. Yeah, absolutely. About 1K, maybe even less south of Sandgan. Off of that, I think it was Highway 1. I could be wrong. Man, it was a shitty mission because you're out there in the middle of nowhere at the fire base, basically. And I never understood it, but our sole objective there was basically to hold the white space that had been fought so hard to have there at Firebase Robinson. So if anybody, I don't know if you live, I'm sure you have backgrounds there, like half of your time or maybe even 60% of your time on a fire base is just purely given to sustaining life in a security position or perimeter type of thing like that. That's it, because there's shit hits the fan, nobody's coming. Food has to get airdropped in, everything like that. So we held the white space. I think we had something like 37 direct fire attacks on the base while we were there, and we would just go out and do presence patrols and movement to contact. And I got really good at identifying and blowing IEDs in place, man, because the fucking place was riddled with IEDs, and that was pretty much encapsulated that trip.
So I forget what was happening in what year, but so that would tie in then when the USMC went in and took over the British in Sangin. Was that the reason you guys, that year? Was that when that happened? I remember that. Yeah, that was, because I remember
So
hearing.
it was the big operation was a.
Go on, sorry, go on.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I remember. I remember hearing about how you guys, when you guys were in there, and just getting smashed by IEDs for some reason. I don't know why. I think you guys put a lot more troops in there for some than we had, obviously for obvious reasons to achieve the mission, and for some, well, not for some reason, for again obvious reasons, the Taliban just switched entirely to just going IED. Set everything was IED. Was very. This is what I was hearing on the net anyway, and very few small arms attacks. And I remember thinking, I do not envy those guys in Sangin right now. It was just a crazy time. Crazy time.
Yeah, no, man, that's 100% accurate. The tactic had shifted, and it was heavily to the pressure plate IED, and they were even putting them in, rice fields and just wild shit, man. Like, because it was hard to. It was a great strategy if you don't care about life or destroying the local populace or anything like that. Yeah, just throw them in random places and off roads, and dudes will hit them, and it'll blow off extremities. From that viewpoint, it was a brilliant strategy. But yeah, you're right, man. I think we took over the SOTF South, my battalion. We took over the SOTF, and then Marja was a big operation where we re-entered, and big, huge clearing operation, and Marja took place that trip as well.
Mm. When you was there any different when you came back from there? Question for you: you deployed as an older guy no, not an older guy. You deployed as someone who had joined up at an older age. So you and I are probably both going through the same experiences. I'd have joined 6 years younger. How did you see any difference in the way you were absorbing experiences of combat compared to people who had sort of had a bit more time to be conditioned towards it? Does that make sense or not?
How do you think my response was an experience with it compared to somebody who had been more conditioned to it, or who wasn't prepared to experience it?
Who had compared to someone who had less life experience as an adult. You were adulting until you were 24 years old in the real world.
Yeah.
Between that period of 18 to 24 years old, you were doing a lot of growing up, right? And you're getting a lot more understanding of the world, and you got a lot better handle on what's going on, especially in the Middle East, and that bigger picture piece from a civilian perspective. Compared to someone who's joined at 18 and then all they've ever experienced of it and their perception of it is completely military orientated.
I think there is a difference for sure. Like you said, there's that geopolitical understanding. But at the same time, do I think somebody that was 18 or 21 couldn't get into a difficult situation and mentally be able to cope with it? I think it just depends on the individual's, mindset, their frame of mind, and their resiliency. So I think there's probably a sector of the population that would have no issues with that. Some, if you were less mature or you hadn't made your mind up ahead of time before going into combat, like nobody knows what the fuck combat is until you're in combat, right? But you have some ideas. I mean, you have some notions, you know what's at stake. And if you haven't already committed to the game, prior to stepping in the arena, understanding like, hey man, if I'm not switched on, things can go south for me, for everybody, and you're not prepared to deal with that, or you haven't worked through that thought process ahead of time, then I think you're going to be set up for failure when things go south, or they get tough, or they get rough. But on the flip side, I think also what's important is training yourself to be in those situations. It might be more difficult, and I'm making some assumptions here. It might be more difficult for an 18 or a 20-year-old to really understand the importance of behavior and patterns, and how coming with a sense of excellence at every time with everything you do is of the utmost importance, because that's going to translate into the real world scenario. So that may or may not be there, but that can be mitigated with proper leadership, proper NCOs and things like that, man. So, there's a difference, but I think it can be mitigated. And I do think that just because somebody's younger doesn't mean they can't be a stellar performer and they can't have a higher level of understanding. I do think that's the case, although it's probably more rare than it is constant.
Yeah, I think what I think I was trying to get at was the experience of the after effects of experiencing the combat in terms. So let me try and this is the first time I've ever thought about it this way, so I'm just trying to word it properly. So
Yeah.
a person who joins at 18, right, or even experiences anything, let's just the military, maybe they don't even go on operations, right, but they're in for a time, right, they've never experienced a baseline in normal, inverted commas, life in civilian world, in civilian street, a baseline level of mental capacity, mental acuity, just mental state, right? So, and I'm talking sort of myself as well. I joined at 18. My experience of how the brain should be expected to operate and function is pretty much, if you think that, okay, the human brain doesn't stop like developing until like 23, 24 years old. Well, that was
Right.
my Helmand time. That was my Iraq war time. And so there's no baseline to compare it with. Whereas people who have joined when they're older, they've always boggled my mind. I think, man, there's something must be really wrong with the civilian world. For you to join up at 23, 24, you're 25 years old, or even sometimes later, like to want to get into this and have an experience of sort of normality, and then when they experience immensely stressful situations like you did, there must be have been a baseline shift in the way your mind is working. You were able to have an adult, a mature perception on how you were beforehand, a conscious awareness of it, much better than a 17, 18-year-old, 16-year-old. And so you were much more aware of any shifts, any changes that might have occurred after a tour, after experiences. And is that the case? And two, was that a positive thing or a negative thing to then impact you dealing with what you dealt with going forward after your tours, and where the Angel Warrior Foundation came from? There's a question there somewhere. I hit a question.
You did. Well, before I jump in, what's your take on it? What's your feel on it? What's the difference between the two as you see it? Like because you did the flip into the spectrum. You went at 18. So how did that affect you being there at 23, 24? Would you say?
I think maybe there it's tougher. Again, and like you said, this is down to individuals, right? And this is a whole. I'm really generalizing here, but I think maybe it's tougher for someone who joins up as a kid to try and get a handle on what their adult brain is doing, which is not quite right. Particularly when we're talking, Andrew, about the stress, anxiety, the symptoms of depression, erratic behavior, all of that stuff. Because quite often, especially in the military, all that gets mingled in with just life and, the army's crazy and those guys are mental and he's just enjoying himself after a tour. And, I think maybe it's more, it's harder to get a grip on it. And so people who are younger, lads or ladies, men or women, maybe spot the issues a bit later. I might be talking shit. I'm just thinking this through now, I don't know. It's interesting to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think, here's what I noticed, man. Like, you could tell a distinct difference of cats who got in at 18, right? And, they had 6, 8 years regular Army experience, and then they came into SF. like great dudes, some of my very good friends still. But like there is a difference in how they reacted with the world. Like there was no filter, you know what I mean? Like they thought everybody talked in the most vile and foul language, and like it didn't matter if you were in public, outside of church, and like come over to my parents' home. Like that's just how we talk to people, and they didn't have a concept of like, no, like this is unusual. People do not interact this way. People do not, call their best friend fucker, and they don't just get belligerent drunk anytime they're not at work. Like these things, these things aren't there. And so, and not saying that's the case with everybody, but to that point, like, yeah, I could see a difference in a guy who came in at 18 and kind of got, I don't know if indoctrinated is the right word, but he didn't have he developed in the Army in this microcosm where he thought that was reality or had the potential for that. And I could see that play out later and how those individuals like reacted or interacted with the world. And I was like, oh, he thinks everybody's like this. They're not. We're really different.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get out of that. It takes, and some people never get out of it. You're right, and it is fun. Even when I left, I left at 30. I was 30 years old, and then I went and worked in the Middle East doing private security. And then I came into my first like civilian job. I landed a really good job, corporate level role with not a small company, and my God, the challenge of it's in social environment, in social situations mostly, because in like a corporate meeting situation, it's not a drama. It's like speaking to your boss. It's like speaking to the major, the commanding officer, whatever. You mind your P's and Q's. You're able to speak, eloquently and adequately. Well, maybe not eloquently, but then in the social situations where you're letting your hair down and you're engaging with people, man, and that's when all the effort and blinding comes out. The inappropriate, those aggressive, the perceived aggressive ways in which we talk. We're just super, we generally, like military people, are just super aggressive when we talk to each other. That's how we interact, but you don't realize it until you're out. Really difficult. It's really difficult, but we're fucking digressing here. Jesus Christ. Well, when did you start?
There's also a lot, also, man, is the, I think that's maybe special to our population is the like extreme dark humor, and I found that doesn't translate well to other sectors of society, and we seem to be just like find great comfort and absurdity, in all the dark humor and jokes about just nasty stuff and death, and I think that's also something that's unique to our population, or people who have been through the trials of real combat.
Yeah, I think over here it carries over into what we call the blue light services over here. Your ambulance, your ambulance service, your police service, and your fire service, but not to the same degree, but certainly there. Certainly in the ambulance service, where they deal with death a lot, all the time. And you've got to find a way through it, somehow to deal with it. But no, you're right. But mate, when did things start going pear-shaped for you? Was it when you were in or when you left?
My last combat deployment was in 2013 to Wardak out in the east, and it was the most intense trip of all my trips. And so it was just well, we were there in Wardak, and we were there at FOB Airborne, which was great. So we had this big installation there, and for the first time, we could just focus all our energy out on the battlefield and going out and doing business, because everything else was secure. We had it was a huge infantry camp. We had this awesome compound that we completely tricked out and built up on the compound. So, everything with the just niceties. I mean, having showers, running waters, great food, great gym. Didn't have to pull security at night. We could just focus on affecting the battle space that we were in. The mission, before we, there had been a lot of shit that went down in that area, the year prior to us coming. And so they actually had to pull a couple of ODAs out of the kind of fire bases that they were at. So it left this vacuum, and they had to pull back to airborne. So the team that we replaced there was kind of it was winter, and they were just focused their energy on training the police. That was right next door to the compound. So we get there, it's early March, and starting to look out within the community. And I mean, the thing had just become, it was Maidan Shar province, had just become riddled with Taliban, and they were the law, openly carrying weapons all throughout. Like we had, a lot of visibility on it, and I was just shocked because this is like not even a K from our site, and they're completely wreaking havoc here. We're taking incoming every day. So all we did for the next 6 months is just clear motherfuckers out day and night. And that was the battle, man. It was a battle for Maidan Shar over the next 6 months. And that's what happens when, at least, it's supposed to be a counterinsurgency, which is, what clear, hold, and build. Well, we seem to be clearing for the last 20 years. We do some building, but we don't hold shit. It's infuriating. It doesn't seem like there's any strategy behind any of this. Maybe it's a conversation for a different time.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
I think that because war is profitable, man.
Yeah. This is another podcast. We ain't going down this rabbit hole. We do that again. Yeah. Okay. I'm inclined to agree. However, we will get back on track in a minute. However, I had a Serbian lady on recently. She's a friend of mine. She's a civilian. She was a redevelopment issue in working for DAI. The redevelopment company, the American company. Anyway, she got smashed up in Kunduz, nearly killed, and we talked about that. And she sees a way forward with it in the military way in terms of redevelopment in Afghanistan. But that is a different topic of conversation. Carry on talking. Right, so you've been clearing for 20 years. That's where you're at. Clearing for 20 years. There's no holding going on.
Yeah. That was the deal, man. So, it was, I know the game. I knew the game, and I opted to play in it. I also enjoyed going out and shooting and killing shitbags. So that was just where I was at. I know I wasn't, we weren't affecting some big strategy or, doing anything else, but I was on that playing field there. There's people, the Taliban, they're bad people, like straight up, whether we should be there or not be there. Terrorizing the town, shooting girls in the head, not allowed to go to school, kidnapping children, raping boys, just disgusting stuff. So we can argue all the stuff, we should be there or not be there. We made a positive impact in the local populace that we were there, really affecting. And so that was the gist of it, man. It was just, can we root out this Taliban stronghold? And we did. What happened after we left, I don't know. I got out of it. But the point being, man, is just, and now we have a culmination of my entire collegiate career, now a Special Forces, career where, again, I'm in and around explosives on a routine basis. I was only knocked unconscious once in my entire life, my entire career. And it was on that trip. We were next to a house that was rigged to blow. We had to get out, and then we were caught between a rock and a hard place. Had incoming fire pinning us down. I realized the RPGs that were coming in was set to trigger the house to blow. So I was like, okay, shit, man, we're pinned down. We have an open area, a river, and we're next to this mosque that's 50 meters from the house that's rigged with explosives to take it down. So it was like, okay, we can't move. If we control this house, it's most likely going to knock us all out. And those are our options, or wait it out and allow them to maneuver on us. So the only options I saw was we had to take our chances, command det house and then pick ourselves up and attempt to fight back to our stronghold, which is what we did. And it turns out it was like 12 107 rounds that we were 50 meters away from, and it just I don't know if it knocked everybody out, but I'll be surprised if it didn't. And I came to, and I had no clue. I didn't have any idea of a self or what was going on. I did remember, like, okay, it was just daytime, and now it's dark. And then I was like, okay, I'm in a building and there's just been an earthquake. So I'm reaching up and I'm feeling around. I'm like, okay, so I'm not in a building. And then, 7.62 RPGs flying by. And I was like, okay, I know what's going on. And at that point, muscle memory snaps back into place and you just go and you do the deal. We didn't lose. We didn't take any casualties. We didn't lose any life on that operation. We were able to get everybody up and fight back to our Overwatch position and live to play another day on that one. But that was the only time that I was ever knocked out, and it was brief, like maybe 3, maybe 5, I don't know, 3 or 5 seconds. So the point I'm making is, like, there wasn't any like drastic like time in my entire career that I had an injury or I was injury prone or anything like that, or had a massive open head wound or just repetitive concussions where I was knocked out. Just didn't happen. 0 issues as I knew it. That was about midway through the deployment, and we just kept her on rock until it was over. So fast forward, I come home, and then about 3 months after my return from home, start having new problems that I've never been there before, like problems with sleep, problems with my energy, problems with libido, very attractive wife. I've been away for a long time, and all of a sudden, I think I'm 33 at the time, and I can't perform, physically. And she's like, hey man, like, her scenario was either you have somebody else or you don't love me anymore. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, I just had to deal with all this nonsense, and now I got to come home and hear this shit, because it couldn't have been further from the truth. And I'm like, listen, I don't know what the deal is. It's not working right now. And I just figured, Hugh, it was like, hey, we were pushing hard the whole time. I was like, I think my body's going to take some time to come back online. That's just how I rationalized it. It never came back online. It could just continue to God, trying to get worse, man. And I started to have panic attacks, and I didn't even know what a panic attack was. I just thought that was some weak person's problem, right? That can't touch me. So then I'm at the gym and doing my thing, and all of a sudden I just like get hit like with a tornado. I have physical energy force that hits me, and I feel I'm losing my balance, and so I'm kind of waving, and things start spinning, and I start hyperventilating, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's going on? So I'm just trying to like brace myself and get control, and I realize like I don't have any control of whatever this physiological process is. It's just kind of like a runaway gun, man. It's just running, and I'm just kind of sit there as the witness to it, but I can't do anything about it. And then so I'm hyperventilating, I'm losing my breath, and I start to become like overly emotional, and I have no control over it. And it produced a fist that felt like it was actually coming up and out of my stomach and turning, and then turn into several. And that didn't go away for about 18 months, man. That constant, significant fist in the stomach. And start to talk about thinking that you're losing your mind. Because was there just a demon that just entered me? Like, did I just get possessed? Like, what happened? So the only thing I could think to do, man, in that situation, of course I wasn't going to talk about it, was to go and start drinking. And that was the only thing in my mind that I knew, like, all right, like, I don't know what else to do, but I can't continue on in this state. And that's when I really started to pick up my drinking. So I went, from this high-level performer in these situations of life and death, starting having these subtle different little problems, no big deal. I'll cope with it. I can't sleep. I never slept that much anyway, but the energy, that was a big thing. I'm a high energy dude. Libido, I'm a high libido dude. That was very odd. And then starting to get hit with anxiety, and then very quickly became this level of depression started to sink in, that then became like incredibly overwhelming, and it seemed like there was an internal battle between good and dark forces, where normally my self-talk is very positive, very optimistic and upbringing, and it was like this devil on the shoulder type of thing, which I also didn't seem to have any control of, just kind of hunkered in, and I was having this fight between good and evil in my head, and I just couldn't figure out, like, what the fuck. And I'm doing the work I want to do. Like, I don't want to do anything else. I want to ride this till I can't ride it anymore. I'm with the woman I love, the woman I want to be with. We have a family, the family we always wanted. So the point I'm making is I had zero issues about anything I had done in combat, zero. And I'm like, well, how can I be depressed? Like, that doesn't add up. Somebody needs to be able to tell me what's going on. And I continued to sit on it so long until my drinking was so out of control that I was drinking it all day, you know, at work, not a problem. But I was drinking and driving, drinking in the morning and driving, drinking in the evening and driving. And I realized, I don't know, I had some rational thoughts there. And I was like, Jesus Christ, you're putting so many people at risk. And something that we always tell ourselves, I think, as operators is, I'm never going to do anything to willingly put my team, the people I love about, in a bad situation, to put them unwittingly or knowingly at risk, especially because of a poor decision that I made. And I realized at that point I wasn't, for whatever reason, I didn't know why, but I couldn't be counted on in one of those situations because I didn't know how I would react. Am I going to have one of these panic attacks that I'm out of control? I can't do anything about it. Am I going to be making poor decisions all of a sudden because I can't put two and two together? You know, and so that's when I raised my hand and I was like, listen, I need some help. Here's what's going on. I don't know why. I don't want it to be there. Like, let's fix it, and then let me get back to work. And that's what I kind of jumped into the military, our military medical system. And that was just a whole another train wreck, man. But, you know, I'll stop right there, Hugh, and see if we want to ask any questions to go any deeper or keep moving.
So, question for you. Why we notice these things early on? When I say we, there are, as you well know now, you know, there are people who listen to you, and there are people who will listen to this, and they go and they're like I do, listen to you, they'll be sitting there, they'll be nodding their heads, because there'll be some or all of what you're talking about, and they have been there, they've touched that experience, right? Here's a question: why didn't you, when you started noticing those issues, you know, straight away with the sort of the unusual behaviour and the libido and the other things you mentioned, why didn't you go and see a doc straight away?
I think it's a good question.
Why does it have to get to be catastrophic until we seek it out?
Yeah, for me, which is the only viewpoint I can speak from, it was that I was the epitome, at least I thought, of a healthy, fit individual, physically, mentally, you know, every domain. So when something hits you, you're just like, I'll just brush it off, because that's probably what I had done my entire life. I'm betting most of the people who listen to this who are in similar situations probably have the same feeling. So I just flick this away, man. No big deal. Boom. And then it doesn't go away. That's odd, you know. That's weird. Okay, I'm just gonna keep trying, because my personality is like, I see the instinct. I know where I'm going. This is a road. Reach it, or I'm gonna bypass it. But just get out. That was my mentality. And then I don't think nobody would have, if I had and said, hey, I need to see somebody, nobody, and I mean nobody in my unit would have said, like, oh, that guy's weak. I'd earned the place at the table at that point. But that being said, there is that mentality that you don't want to show any weakness whatsoever. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's just the way it is, man. Like, I don't acknowledge, you know, and I think that's because we don't do our best to not acknowledge pain. We know it's there, but we just have a good way of just pushing through it, at least physically, and, you know, in training and in these combat situations. So that's another one. I think that it's just like, and then you think, probably nobody else in the history of the world has ever dealt with this. It's probably just unique to me. And so there's nobody that I can talk to about it. So I'll just keep it to myself because, like on the ODA, like everybody else has got their own problems. They all have a family and everything else. We're dealing with all the stuff we deal with at work. And then like they need to hear about my problems, which they would have, but I just didn't put them on it. So, I think it's just the whole mindset and the stigma around that. And then later on, man, when you think there really is a problem, you're worried about security clearance, you're worried about career, you're worried about kind of those long-term things. But on the front end, that didn't really enter my mind, and yes, I think it's so important to have these conversations, too, because that's kind of what I want to point out is like we can take steps to mitigate the train from ever having to come off the tracks like it did with myself and with so many others, many of which they're no longer here. That kind of is the force that continues for us to keep pushing and put this information out and have these conversations is to start a new conversation, to start a new level of awareness about what we can do, to prevent these things from happening, or what are some steps that we can take at the earliest signs of them. But I don't know, man, what's your take on it from your experience? Why don't guys jump in there quicker?
The stigma is one. The stigma is the one obvious one. I think the other one is a lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. The way I sort of think about it myself, I know now. I see now. If I was to put it into like a graphical representation, there is a ladder. At the bottom of the ladder is the bottom of a pit. At the bottom of the ladder is that you've got to hang off the bottom of the ladder and drop 10 foot into a pit. When you're in the bottom of the pit, it's very hard to reach the ladder, right? And we're all at the top of the ladder. Baseline, healthy baseline is the top of the ladder. Every person is, military or not, flipping woman or man, or whatever gender you want to call yourself, anything. We're all at some stage, at some point in the ladder. Most of us are high up the ladder, okay? For the majority of people, they don't know what the lower steps even look like. They don't know what the lower steps even look like. And the way I feel about myself now, I am now really, I'm just much more aware of when I drop down a rung. I'm just really sensitive to it, only because I'm more aware of what causes my mental state to drop down a level. It could be anything. I could be tired. I could have had a beer yesterday. I could have had an argument with someone, or it could be the opposite. I did something positive today. I felt really good. I won the lottery, or my missus told me she loved me, or my kids told me that they love me, and I'm elevated, right? So now it's a case of when I drop down a rung, I'm much more aware of it, and also I know what's at the bottom of the ladder. I know how hard it is to get back up. So when I drop down, I'm just more conscious of it, and I can step back up because I've been there and I've seen it, and also because I'm very lucky. I have the privilege of speaking to people like you and other people of a similar background, or not of a similar background, but of similar experiences. Okay, and I'm just more conscious of it, as you are. I'm guessing it's the same for you. You know when you drop down a couple of rungs, and I think I now really think, okay, I need to get on top of this now. Otherwise, I'm going to face 2-3 weeks or months of bad habits or drinking or lack of exercise. And then guess what will happen then? My mental state will plummet. Because the way I see it is, and again from personal experience over the last few years, is the first couple of rungs to drop down, they take time to drop down. But the lower down the ladder you get, the faster the descent is. And you are rapidly sliding down it until it's just free fall, man. And the faster you're falling, the harder it is to get a grip on the rung and slow it down, let alone start climbing back up. And then when you get all the way to the bottom, you don't even see the ladder anymore. There is no ladder. There's only one way out, and that's it. You stay in the darkness the whole time. And the only way to be shown the opposite of it is for your environment to change, your situation to change, or you to be exposed to information you're otherwise unaware of. And the only way you get that, especially for the military background, is you get it from people you resonate with. Because in that state of mind, you ain't going to sit there and read a book about fucking mindfulness. You ain't going to sit there and see a post on Instagram about, oh, it's okay for men to talk. Well, you're not going to do that. It's going to be your buddies who have an understanding of it, who are going to communicate that information to you. And it takes, and for me, it took multiple times that repeated message to me from people, repeated, encouragement from people I love and trust. A long time, and then it clicked once. And then all of a sudden, I didn't see the way out, but I'd been told it was, and so I started to climb back up. And this is the problem with it. One is the stigma, and two is the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge around your knowledge of yourself and an emotional state, but also why it's happening, which is a key one here, Andrew. And it's a key one that when I first broached on this subject of neurophysiology and neuroendocrinology and psychology versus physiology versus psychiatry. Oh, not versus, this is the wrong word, but how are they going hand in hand? When I first mentioned this to Mandy Bostwick, it was like a light bulb coming on, a switch being flicked to me. And just in terms of understanding, not, oh, here is the miracle cure, but I understand this a lot better now, a lot better. And it's the same for other people who've listened to or watched people like yourself, people like Mark Gordon, people like Mandy Bostwick over here. It's an understanding. You're getting knowledge. You understand the situation better. When you understand the situation better in an area that seems very, 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 what's the word? Difficult to understand, a spaghetti junction of and a web of causes and effect, which is the mind. It's the more information you get to understand it better, then the more likely people are to be able to stop themselves sliding down the ladder, and which is why I'm grateful for your time today. Why was the military medical side? Why was that a train wreck for you?
Yeah. Before that, man, what a great analogy with the ladder. That really resonated with me. And I think what the importance is, like the question I asked myself was, if anybody would have brought this information to me when I was a healthy individual, operating, a team guy, would I have received it? Would it have gotten through? And I think if I just heard it once, probably not. But if I continued to hear it from people who I respected, or people that had earned the respect of our community, people that had been in those type of situations and predicaments, if that was just the way that we talked, then that just becomes the way we do business. And that's my hope for what we're doing here, is that strong, hardcore individuals can talk about their experience, talk about identify problems for the sole intent to identify and bring solutions and new solutions to help change the way that we do business in the most positive of directions. So I think that, again, like I was listening to you talk, man, about the ladder analogy and the new information or knowledge. And that's what we're doing. Because when I was, and I'll go into the medical question here in a second, but when I was sinking in all of this, the information that we've been able to bring to the forefront since 2015, it wasn't there, man. Like I had to figure out how to put all this stuff together. There wasn't any link. And so segueing into like, hey, why do I have a problem with the military medical model is, well, I raised my hand, I have a problem, and by the way, like my memory is gone. I can't, words that I need to communicate and articulate, not fancy words, not compounded words. I'm talking about every day, like when I go to use the word pen, the word's not there. Words with just my regular vocabulary with my job responsibilities. And so now I can't even recall and pull regular words. I can't remember things in sequence. I can't, anything new, forget about it. Focus, gone. So, there's all these other areas, and started having a lot of physiological problems too. So headaches into migraines, that led into blurry vision, that led into double vision. Then now I can't even walk in a straight line. That was the new daily occurrence. And then I'm just psychologically psychologically a complete wreck, and I can't sleep. So what did the system do? Very well intended. Well, first, my unit, all they wanted to do was help. They're like, listen, we don't have the specialties here that you need. So I got farmed out to all these different specialty physicians, like six or seven different specialists. And everybody was only looking at it from a very narrow viewpoint of like, here's the entire you, or here's the pie. My specialty is a sliver right here. And my sliver says that everything that you're dealing with, it's not in here. So go to the guy down the hall. He's got this section. And I go down to the hall, but it would take 3 weeks to get to the guy down the hall. I'd see the guy down the hall. Then it'd take 3 weeks for him to get back to me of what his assessment was. And it was the same thing. So now I started becoming infuriated because I'm going through this stupid system that does nothing to look at the holistic picture. None of these doctors are talking to one another. The only thing that seems to be constant is they're like, yeah, I don't know. You're dealing with all these symptoms. Here's medications that will help to quell some of these symptoms, but it won't do anything to fix the problem. And it going around the wheel there. And so what that ended with was me being all over the country, went to the care for head injuries and traumatic brain injuries that our Department of Defense had, everything. That left me being on 13 medications, being forced to be medically retired from the Army. They labeled me with over 30, disabilities, like neurocognitive, like all these psychological disorders. And my major complaint was that I don't have any history of any of these psychological issues. I'll own the physical stuff, the wear and tear, of course. But here was my question, and I started to look into neuroendocrinology and put two and two together. Because just intuitively, I was like, man, we've been around a lot of blasts. That has to have some effect. And so I started asking individuals questions. I'm like, hey, is there any correlation to what I'm experiencing being a consequence of being around all these low-level blasts over the last 10 years? And everybody's like, no. If you're still experiencing post-concussive or TBI symptoms 6 months after a head injury, well, that's not from a head injury. That's from psychological distress. And I had one psychologist tell me that, hey, Andrew, you've been very good at compartmentalizing, and you've been on so many missions, and you just file that stuff away in a file cabinet in your mind, but there's so many that when you go to close that, it can't close anymore. And the files are just spilling out. And that's what you're experiencing psychologically. And I was like, well, is that just your opinion? Like, can you use any type of measurement or an objective test to support that? Because I say that's not the case. And I think it's something else, but I didn't know what that something else was. So that's the military medical model. It completely ignores the presence of any physiological consequences that affect the processing, the neurochemical processing of the brain. How does that manifest when that is affected? It manifests as depression. It manifests as anxiety. It manifests in issues with cognition. It manifests in anger, in rage, in inability to properly relate in social circumstances, to have good interpersonal skills, even though that's never been a problem. And when you start to understand that we can identify all those things in very real terms using objective measurements rather than some asshole's opinion that then puts you on a number of psychotropic drugs that has disastrous side effects for a large portion of the population, me included, well, that is the problem that I have with the way the business is done right now. But yet of just crying about it or saying, oh, worries me, what, this, that, and the other. No, let's talk about what we can do different. Let's talk about can we improve the situation. And that's the encouraging part about all of this.
Have you been facing, 2 seconds, Mike, have you been facing, when you experienced talking over here, when you came over last year, or was it 2019 with Mark? When you briefed the...
We were there January. We were there 1 year ago. Yeah, we were there 1 year ago, January of 2020. Yeah.
So the UK is like we're years behind where the US seems to be at the moment with this military. But was it a similar experience to what you'd experienced over in the States in terms of the receipt of the information?
Oh man. So I mean, I touched on that. We touched on this a little bit on our last Rogan interview. It was hostile. Talking about we were coming to hostile territory.
I heard it.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the name of the paper, but it was written by, and I'm not even going to give the guy credit, but it was some of the prominent people that are in the NHS system, in psychiatry, psychology, and so-called people who have expertise in dealing with traumatic brain injury. Their assessment that they did in the study was they looked at like 81 guys in the UK, military members, combat guys, who were suffering from, psychological issues, what they call psychological duress. And it also showed, I think, a high majority of them had head injuries, right? And the analysis of their study, which is what I guess is the way that the UK looks to look at minor traumatic brain injuries, is that, listen, we can't verify that these individuals had a head injury, even though they said that they did. But we find that the reason that they're having all these psychological issues that we know are a consequence or potentially an overlap from having a head injury, it's not due to a head injury. It's not due to a physiological injury. It's due because they have psychological duress from their combat experience. And they're unwilling to look at, accept, receive, or investigate any information, no matter how scientifically valid, sound, logical, researched, or applied clinically, that differs that body of work. And when you jump into that, it's really more about like, I get this much of money every year to do this type of research, and now there's a competing interest in here, and I have the monopoly on this, which I think is just really enforced not only as a money mechanism, but to keep strong individuals down. There's no other, I've looked at it for 5 years now. I didn't have this conclusion when I first jumped in the game, but now I'm confident. These things are in place to keep people down. And that's what's going on. So that was the case there in the UK. They did not receive that information well. They attacked Marr, they attacked the science, and we had the top people in the NHS. We had the top people from experts from the US as well, who are very open to science. Not saying that America is like, we have all our own fucking problems as well. But that was the issue there, man. So for whatever reason, and the good thing is that Air Marshal Reed was open to it. He's like, okay, well, why don't we run a test? Let's do a project, and we'll see what the results are, and then we'll go from there. And then that got squashed. So that was kind of our UK trip. It was funny because we thought that we had defeated the system, and we were going to come in and have this, alternative to the conventional means. And we were actually going to get to test it out on the battlefield and have it prove its merits, which we were completely confident in. And then, so that night, man, we celebrated like it was 1999. And then that, COVID hit. And then from a roundabout way, that got usurped as well.
Yeah, I think the guy on board was the Surgeon General that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, mate. It's from I say you're right. What would I know? I'm in line with what you, after speaking with Mandy and speaking with Andrew, with Mark, and speaking with yourself, and I saw the report as well. I speak with some other people. Yeah, that's what it's a case of. It's my understanding is Imperial College have the monopoly on psychiatric research, which influences psychiatric treatment within the military and that aspect of it. And they because they're contracted to the Defence Medical School, DMS, and I mean, whether you talk about money or power, on a broad level, it compromises their influence in that field, right? At the very minimum. But I don't know if Mark's mentioned to you, I sent the link, but things are moving in a positive way over here. I think slowly, mind, really flipping slowly. But Mandy and Professor Gary Green, who I believe is at that briefing with
Hmm.
you, yeah, they
Yeah.
were in. They gave a briefing to something over here called the Defence Select Committee over here, which is to do with defence, all matters defence, right? They gave a briefing and held a discussion with Defence Select Committee a couple of weeks ago. I don't really know how long. I'll send you the link after this. Actually, really well presented
He sent it
information.
to me. Yeah, I got it. I watched a little bit yesterday.
Oh, there you go, cool. And I got told yesterday from a lady called Kate England, whose husband is who suffers from complex PTSD, real, just really struggles. So he's a really nice guy, and she's been battling forward, trying to get appropriate treatment for him, and just appropriate treatment and for everyone really who needs it. And she sent me a message day before yesterday. They're going to be Mandy and Gary will be back in. Professor Gary, I should say, will be back in with Parliament on the 26th. It'll be the same link. It'll be the same link, but keep an eye out for that. But is that similar to what that experience when you came over early last year? Is it a similar experience that you or Margaret has had in the US with trying to get this research and treatment listened to, and or not? How is it being received over there? How much headway are you making with this?
Hmm. I would say in the special operations community, it's not a secret anymore, and it's well received. And it's funny, man, because I was an enlisted guy, senior enlisted guy, and I get out and we're doing our work, and so when we go and talk and to these different units, we're talking to the group commander or the second in charge and this, that, and the other. And it's funny because we think when we're in, like they have all this power and all this influence to bring about change or to usher in something different. And it just became blatantly obvious after about two conversations in. I was like, oh man, this guy doesn't make decisions. Like he's just like everything else. Somebody's dictated a certain decision set with him, and he has a little bit of freedom and autonomy to move in there. But outside of that, like he just can't go and change how the system is run. And so what I mean is like, yeah, we have the backing of a lot of people in high levels of leadership, but the people that actually make the decisions higher up, not so much. That hasn't been met there. And I think again, man, like I don't deal in conspiracy theory, but I deal in conspiracy fact. And the fact of the matter is that in the U.S. we have lobbyists, that special interests that lobby against government to have these interests brought into fruition from a free market, or so-called free market perspective. So the point I'm making here is I think with the pharmaceutical company has something like 1,400 lobbyists. We only have 535 members of representative government in the U.S. So we're talking 3-to-1 ratio. So there's no incentive for there to be a change or an alteration in a model that takes somebody off of a medication that otherwise they were told they were going to be on for the rest of their lives. See, that's a direct attack on their business model. See, what we're saying is that majority of that can be done without a pharmacological means and using something much better received to the body that's natural. And because of that, like these things aren't necessary for everybody. I'll say that. Well, that's a tremendous potential attack. That's why these things, the volume on them does not get turned up. That's why you think like 20 years later, we have all these people suffering. We're not talking about radical things here. We're talking about things that's been well researched, applied clinically, natural, validated. The reason it doesn't get the noise, the volume that it needs is you have to question that. It's because there's an angle to it. They don't want that information getting out. They'd rather have people, rather factory farm out humans than get them up, right, thinking clearly, able to make good decisions with their eyes open, because maybe then we wouldn't have such a compliant society for all this nonsense that we see going on. So that's just my own 2 cents of being in the last 5 years, but I think that's the resistance there. The resistance that we find is not because it's not a logical model, it's not a scientific model, Because we've done the cost analysis, it makes complete sense from a so-called policymaker decision. So there has to be something else to it. And then you go look a little bit deeper and follow the money. It's easy to make that conclusion. Like there's no incentive for somebody else to just do the right thing. And I'm not even saying like make this primary. We need alternatives. We need free choice. We need to be able to make choices, and we should have freedom over our own health. We should have that. And I'm saying right now, you have to really fight for that to happen, and have to really look hard to find information to go and make that a reality. So that's where the resistance comes from, man. That world according to Andrew.
How is so? Talk to me about Angel Warrior Foundation. How does that work for this cause then? What's it about, mate?
Yeah, it's Warrior Angels Foundation.
Oh, sorry, I do apologize.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. It came about, man, like when I was going through all of this before I met Mark. My oldest boy was 13 months at the time, and he had a life-threatening illness, had to go through a number of significant surgeries, and he had just had this massive growth removed out of his neck. So I'm there with him in the ICU, and he's recovering, and I had this moment of clarity as I looked down his bed. And at that point, I realized that in my current condition, I was of no value to him or my family. And that was going to kill me. But worse than that, I just realized like they're going to grow up either with somebody that shouldn't be around, or they're not going to grow up, with me. Either way, it's going to be bad. So I made a promise to my boy and myself, 3 things. 1, I would return to the man of my pre-injury status. 2, I would find a way to come off all that medication. And after those 2 things were accomplished, I was going to turn around and I was going to help other people do the exact same thing. And that was kind of the fire, the ignition that got me moving in a different direction. I started to ask myself different questions, and I started to envision a different future than the current timeline that I was in. And that put me on that track. So when I was able to meet Mark, I was able to receive his protocol, I was able to perform as I am today, as good if not better than my pre-injury status, completely free of all medication and symptoms, which is not special or significant to me because we've helped to produce it over 400 times now, close to 520 times now, is that, okay, let's start an organization where we can help individuals just like myself and families who are crumbling just like mine was, get the same access to the same level of care that I received. So my brother and I started that in 2015 with not any idea other than that. And then now it's just kind of morphed and evolved into this finely tuned machine that's kind of hitting on 3 different cylinders. One is like we provide and we put out like really good information. So we've done that with books, movies, podcasts, blogs, all that. We just put out information because before, like I said, it wasn't really understood, what can cause the brain to become inflamed and how that inflammation can lead to these downstream effects that just can derail somebody. And if you don't treat that correctly, it's never going to improve itself. So that was one aspect of it. Like, okay, there's the information aspect of it. There's the treatment aspect of it. And that's probably, unfortunately, like the smallest footprint because, we have to raise our money to be able to support the people that we support there. So that's why, it's not a wide-ranging type of deal, but we've supported now 520 individuals since 2015. The third aspect of it is the research. We've been pushing out with the help of our in partnership with Mark Worden, his Millennium Health Centers, the results of our clinical work. And so now we've made just groundbreaking contributions to the fields of trauma and traumatic brain injury care. So those are kind of the 3 avenues with which the foundation is solidly supporting. And we're looking into the future now that we've proven out the model. I don't care what anybody says or feels about it because I know the facts, I know the history, I know the results. We have it all very well done. And now we're going to go the same thing and we'll apply that to the homeless population, and we'll apply it to the incarcerated population, because we think we can show benefit to those populations as well. So that's kind of the genesis of the foundation and the high level overview and where we're all looking to go for the future.
Sorry, so when you say the homeless population and incarcerated, do you mean in general or military specific?
I mean in general, but we might. I'm not. It's to be determined. Right now, it's a broad-based initiative that me and Dr. Gordon both feel strongly about with the veteran population. But like here's what we know. We know that in the U.S., but I would assume it was the same for the UK, Europe. Most industrialized nations, is that homeless, up to half of them, half of the homeless population has a documented head injury somewhere in their timeline. And when you get into the incarcerated realm, we're talking about 7 out of 10 have a documented head injury. And here's the thing: most head injuries are not documented because it's the repetitive, cumulative effects over time that can really take its toll. And that's what goes on with kind of our population. Sure, they see it, they have a big blast. That was my case. It was just these repetitive, subconcussive, cumulus blasts over time. Each one dwindles away our resiliency to the point where the last pin kind of breaks the camel's back there, type of thing. So that's the case. So that's why we want to continue to expand kind of our work and our reach to those populations. I think we would like to do it with the veteran population, but we're not narrow to that.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is we've had this conversation today, and it's very military centric, and we're talking about things like blast and also in the sports side with physical knocks to the head. But as one of the things that is articulated very well by the Quiet Explosions documentary that you did, is that it's not just about physical traumatic brain injuries caused by physical things. Your traumatic brain injuries can be caused by emotional experiences. The lady, I forget her name, I think she was Navy, was a rape victim. Annie was a rape victim, right? And experiencing many of the same symptoms that you did, other people experience from blast or impact. I mean, and that was one of the eye openers on that as well. And I sort of understood that part already, but that was when I really understood that. Holy shit. Okay, and again, going back, that's why I asked about the homeless and the incarcerated, is because I see people like you in the military community with this stuff. I see you as kind of you're the flag carriers, right? For this knowledge at the moment, we're trying to spread it for the benefit of the military community. But that knowledge, as you well know, this is wide-ranging positive impact for society, because your traumatic brain injuries and the symptoms of can be really, really mild, really, 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 small to really, really severe. And again, those traumatic brain injuries can be caused by anything. You don't have to be a fucking soldier or spec ops guy or a marine or anything and go and get blown up, or you don't have to be a boxer, an American football athlete, or an MMA fighter. These are symptoms that are caused by a wide variety of things, causes issues in the brain, and this is a very, very effective way of treating it, but also prevention, which is another way of, a way of treatment that is preventative to the impacts of it. You can't stop knocks to the head, you can't stop the extreme emotional experience that you're going to do, but you can help prevent the impacts of it. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Really, really has. Is there anything you want to cover that we haven't covered?
No, I'm pretty much an open book, man. I just no agenda here other than to have a good conversation. I really enjoyed our talk. Be honored to come back on again and jump into any category or domain. I think the audience will find this useful. Hey, there's more information on our website, waftbi.org. Mark Gordon's got a great website. I'm sure he went put out in the last episode, but it's tbihelpnow.org. Between those two, man, there's just cutting edge information on both sites that breaks things down into ways that is easily understandable. And that's another thing about Quiet Explosions is our director, Jerry Shearer, just did a phenomenal job of breaking down these advanced neurological concepts with some of the most well-respected people in their field, down to ways that like anybody can understand it. And that's how we got to communicate. We got to communicate with ways that people can receive it and understand the information in powerful different mediums. So if you want more information, man, it's all there. But that would probably be it, Hugh. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to come on and talk.
Oh, mate, cheers for your time. And when you go to the UK, or if I come there, we'll do something in person. Listen, stay safe, keep doing what you're doing, and good luck.
Thanks, Hugh. Appreciate it, brother. Have a great night.
Cheers, mate.